Hey there, internets. So I actually already made this video, but the audio was so bad I figured I better remake it. And I'm sorry for anybody I piss off. I'm not trying to be pretentious, and I'm not trying to be. I'm not trying to force my opinions onto you. No one asked for them, but I figured I better make a video because why not? Yeah, so I think that fandoms are getting really weird. The echo chambers online are getting really aggressive. And I just am trying to take a minute to step back and say, hey, you make art for an audience, not just to pander to your artist friends and not just to do something because it's cool or I like this. You can make art to be self-expressive, of course, but once you want to if you make the decision you want to make it your career, you need to be willing to meet some standards. You need to be willing to conform a little bit. You need to be willing to, you need some constructive criticism from your peers. You need to have someone say, don't do that. You need to be willing to have someone come up to you and say, hey, you know what? Here's what you did that wasn't effective, and here's how we can make it better. And if that bothers you, I know there are people out there that are trolls that are just trying to tear you apart, but I'm talking about constructive criticism to get better. That should not be seen as a bad thing. And I know people say, well, everything's biased and you can't really whatever, and it's like, yeah, but you're just derailing the fact that you weren't effective at something. And, wow, no, everything's subjective, you can't say that. Well, yeah, you can. I don't understand why in postmodern, this postmodern world, only fine arts and performance arts are on this pedestal of being holier than thou, right? Every other craftsman, whatever art form, there's a standard that has to be met. Right? So if you're a chef, you have to adhere to a recipe, at least to some degree. Regardless if you like the type of food. If you like the way something tastes, yeah, that's subjective. But if you spoiled the food because you put too much of an ingredient in, or you cooked it for too long at too high of a temperature or too low a temperature, that's not subjective. That's very measurable. Same with writing. If something is in a specific language, if you don't adhere to the grammar and spelling of that language, the reader will not be able to understand what you wrote. The same is true if you're an architect, whether we're talking about the design or the execution. If you don't adhere to certain measurements and certain laws of physics, your structure is going to fall down. It's the same if you're a seamstress or a tailor. If you make clothing or something with fabric and you don't adhere to measurements and certain technique of how to bind them together, the fabric will fall off the subject. It's really not an opinion. It just is a fact. And I don't understand. Music is probably the best example I can think of. Because whether or not you like the genre of music, whether we're talking about classical, opera, alternative rock, blues, hip hop, whether we're talking about country, it doesn't matter. Pop, it doesn't matter. All music must follow certain laws of music theory. Things like a time signature, things like tuning. What key are you playing the notes in? What note is it? What measurement of the sound frequency of the vibration is it? Well, that either is this note or it's that note, or the in-between. Is it in major or minor key? Is it in 6/8 versus 7/8 versus 4/4 versus 3/4 in terms of your time signature? It really doesn't matter if you like the genre of music. It either is in the correct time signature or it is not, which means it's either in sync or it's not in sync. It either is in tune or it's not in tune. It's really not an opinion. So how well you effectively executed something is measured more by how well you adhered to that, as opposed to, do you like this genre? Because you don't have to like the genre. So I don't understand why fine arts like painting and drawing and the performance arts like acting are somehow exempt from this. It doesn't make any sense to me, and I think it's arrogant. And I think you need to have someone say, hey, don't do that. Hey, this sucked. This was not effective. Let's make it better. That's a good thing. That makes you a better performer. That makes you a better artist. I don't know why we're afraid of critiquing. Yeah, there's trolls out there that tear you apart. Don't worry about them. You should have the ability to reach out to a bunch of colleagues or peers and say, hey, how effective was I at this? Do you want to be Bob Dylan all along the Watchtower or Jimi Hendrix all along the Watchtower? One's, in my opinion, better than the other because it was executed better, even though Bob Dylan was the creator. I don't know. It's subjective, but I think we should be able to measure things and say, hey, that was good, or this could be better, without people thinking that we can derail this whole thing with some kind of postmodern philosophy. Just my opinion.